Hey, my friends. So, what is it like to decide as an empty nester that you're going to start a business in midlife? That's after surviving the death of your first spouse and the health scare with the second. My guest today is Kathy Dowda Coda. Got that right, right?
Yes, got
And
it.
she has a story to tell. I mean, it's a story of, hey, I've decided I've been through enough in this life and I don't like how things are going, and I'm just going to do it myself. And we're going to get into how did she get the courage to do that? How did she find the strength to pick herself back up? How does she get the opportunity to keep reinventing herself over and over and over? It's your girl, Tisha Mitchell, your midlife makeover maven. And I am introducing our guest today, Miss Kathy. Kathy, tell us a little
Hi,
bit about yourself, ma'am.
hi. So glad to be here. I love this that you're doing this. So I am now 50 years old. In August, I was 50. I have a 29-year-old daughter who works at Disney. As you mentioned, I was married previously to Stanley, and about 7 years ago, actually, he succumbed to cancer after a 6-year battle. And I have actually gotten remarried again, and he had a health scare. He had a brain aneurysm in 2021, and here we are. And all through that, I was in a career for 20 plus years working for a ductwork manufacturer. And when COVID hit 2020, I decided to be an entrepreneur and take on a new business. And that's where I am.
Wow, we got a lot to unpack here. So you said a lot. So you're a young mother to Stanley. And you said Stanley had been sick with cancer for 6 years. So how old were you and he, like when you first got the cancer diagnosis?
So let's see, I was 44 when he passed. So 6 years prior, he was exactly 10 years older than me. So he was 54 when he passed. So we found out in 2011. He thought it was some kind of gallbladder something, and it ended up being liver and lung cancer. And he did not smoke and he did not drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
He owned his own business. He battled it. He fought, and then he fought to the end, and he was just tired.
so you're in your 30s
Mm.
and you're married and you have a young child at this point, right? And you think that your husband maybe has some, routine sickness. Gallbladder is really not that big a deal. And you get this like major diagnosis. Like what was that like for you? Like what was going on in your family? He had a business. I'm assuming he was the primary breadwinner. How did that impact your household when he found out he had cancer?
Uh, so he had a kind of a motto: "Live like you're dying," and that is how he just lived his life. There was never any fear. I took all of his strength, and I lived and lived and lived. But I have to kind of go back a little bit to why I was and am the way that I am, because I lost my father at 54 years. He was 54. It's very similar, even with my daughter's age at 24 is when she lost Stanley. So I lost my father at a young age. Sorry, my dogs. And so I watched my mother and what she went through. And my mother was very type A, very strong woman. So I got a lot of that. But Stanley was the reason. I just saw in him, and I lived everything through him. Now, I immediately knew in my mind, I was already processing, you're going to be a widow. You're ultimately going to be a widow. They told us it was not a death sentence right now, but there was no cure. We knew that there was no cure. And so I just lived as much as I could through him and with him. He worked 7 days a week, and we went out and bought a camper, and I said, I took his calendar and I said, you're not working every other weekend. And we went and camped, and we had a boat, and we just lived. We lived for those 6 years. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how. I don't know how I did it even after, he was gone, but I know what he would want for me. So
And were you working at that time?
I was,
Oh,
yes,
wow.
I
So you're
was.
balancing working. So let's talk about the mental health. Like, what did you do to really kind of, you've got the spouse that has this ongoing illness that that eventually you're going to be a widow, and you're working a job and you're still trying to, maintain as much time with him as you can, and you still have a daughter. Like, how are you balancing, all of these like competing priorities?
It was tough. I will say during all this time I traveled for work. So I was gone typically Monday through Thursday. I would usually get back on Thursday nights. So it was like as soon as I hit the ground from either flying or driving, we were together that weekend. And I would go to his shop and I would spend time at his shop. And we just decided, we were forced into kind of being together more, simply just because of the diagnosis that he was given.
How did you show up at work? Like, how did you focus on work when you were like, how did you focus on those two different worlds? Like, it's almost like you had to pack up and be in one world at work and then come back
It's
and be in a different world.
compartmentalized. That's the best way that I can say. When I hit the airplane, when I hit the car, I was 100% on my job, and when I got home, then I was 100% here, focused, with him and living. Um, I guess out of sight, out of mind. Obviously, I was still calling, hey, did you take your medicine? Did you, eat? Are you eating right? All those things. But it wasn't a debilitating cancer like some. It wasn't, he was homesick all the time. I mean, he worked even when he was tired and his liver was taking on water and he was having to, he was swelling. He was still working. I mean, he worked up until the month that he passed away, the
Oh,
month
wow.
prior to passing away. So, again, he had so much strength that I just gained it through him.
That's awesome. That's
And,
awesome.
I mean, a lot of people ask me, how did you do it? I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice.
Well, I'm gonna unpack that a little bit, because some people, we say this, right? We say, I didn't really have a choice. And I'm gonna push back a little bit in that you probably had a standard or a thought about how your life wanted to go, and that's the way you saw it. There are some people who choose to get into substances or do all kinds of counterfeit comforts. So when you say you didn't have a choice, you did have a choice. You made a choice to be healthy and to, live, to really play the hand that you were dealt to the best of your ability.
That's
So
right.
let's unpack that. When you say you didn't have a choice, what was going on in your core values and your core mind that said, this is how we're going to handle it? Because, there may be some people who do want to handle it that way and they're just not quite sure how. How do you, where did that strength come from?
I think it was my mom. At a very young age, my father had a heart attack at 38, and then at 48. And I remember as a child watching him, and if he would sweat, I would say, Dad, do you have your heart medicine with you? It was a constant fear that, oh my God, he's going to die in front of me. I was totally scared of that all the time. But then I saw my mom and how it didn't phase her. It just didn't phase her. She just kept on pushing on. And I guess I think that's kind of where that strength comes from. But at the same time, you don't ever leave someone. Or when I say it wasn't a choice, there was no option for me to run and escape it. You don't do that to someone that you love. You're there, you're in the trenches with them. We're both combating this to death, even though I used to always say he had the Grim Reaper chasing him all the time. I didn't have that. But that, I felt like that Grim Reaper was chasing us both, because he was taking him away from us. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, what I mean when I say I didn't have a choice. I was in it, come hell or high water. It's just, that's what I did. I got up every day and I put my feet on the ground and I just did what I had to do to survive.
You know, that's an interesting analogy when you say you felt like the Grim Reaper was really kind of on you. Like, and so while the Grim Reaper probably, you know, that you knew of it wasn't coming for your life, the Grim Reaper, your physical life, right?
Yes,
But Grim Reaper was coming for the life that you and your husband had built together.
yes.
And you knew, right, this is going to be short-lived. How do you think that um that has I'm gonna come back to this, but I want to talk about how that has carried you because at a certain point, you know, for a number of us, it's not until something major like that happens that we actually start living. And it sounds like, you know, you kind of got a little bit of that in that, you know, we've got this finite amount of time. And wouldn't it be interesting if we all woke up every day knowing that we've only got this finite amount of time?
But
And
we do.
we
But
do, right?
we do.
But we don't pay
Yes,
attention to it, right?
yes,
We just think,
yes.
we'll get to it tomorrow. But knowing for sure that you've got this finite amount of time and you saying, hey, we're living it. We're living it to the best of our ability. I mean, I think that that is commendable. So, you know, you had those 6 years, you were able to be together. What's going on with your daughter at this time?
She's living her best life, living her best life. She's at Disney. Her dream job, never knew it was her dream job until after she graduated college. She didn't even know. Um, and she's just living her life.
So
She's
she's still
got
at
some
Disney.
residual
Uh-huh.
from losing him and not being here. You know, she was at college while she was at West Georgia, but she was still 30, 45 minutes away. And, you know, she wasn't with us a lot. But down there, she was just living her life, you know, and I was back working, you know, again. And we are very close. We talk every day, 2 or 3 times a day. So I think we had that going. And she was very busy in this job. It's not something where she's got a lot of downtime. So she's good, good.
So it sounds to me like you know we think about the bold laws, right? And the one bold law is what you focus on expands.
And
And it sounds like this is one of those cases where you were just focused on the life that you had together for the amount of time that you had together. And that was just going to be that focus. You weren't thinking about, oh, woe is me. This is not, you know, this is not fair. This is not happening. I don't hear that in your voice at all.
I don't think that's inherent in me, period. I just don't. I've got a very, I'm never a poor, pitiful me. I'm never, oh, you know, there, I don't know. My mom used to say, what is that thing? I think I'll go eat worms. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. Think I'll go. I'm not a pity party type person. Sometimes in my own mind, but I never show it. I say another analogy about myself. I'm an egg. I'm hard on the outside, but I'm a bunch of mush on the inside. And I am that way. So there's a shell around me that a lot of people don't see. Battle things on the inside that most people don't see.
So
You know,
let's stop right here because that's very interesting. And you say, yeah, I'll have all the stuff going on the inside, but I don't say it. So, how do you handle that? What is your practice when you know that this mush is happening on the inside? Like you've got this tough exterior, but on the inside, there's some other stuff going on. What is the conversation you're having in your head? Like, do you have a mantra for when you get into that space to get you back out? How are you do? What do you do?
I try to look in the mirror and say, that doesn't define you. That isn't who you are. This is just a bump in the road. This is just a valley you've got to cross. This is just a bridge you've got to, you know, a fence you've got to climb, a brick, something. You got to figure out a way to go around it. This doesn't define you. It's not who you are. It's just a bump in the road. And I mean, even in this business that I'm in now, that's the way it is. That particular buyer seller doesn't define me. I know the person that I am. I know I'm a good person. I know that I try to do the absolute best that I can. So I just, I just let that go and then I keep going. Pull my bootstraps up and I just keep going.
Wow, that's interesting. So, for a lot of women, some of us don't get the first husband. And you had a great marriage, sounds like, with your first husband. And then you find another husband. So how long was the gap between losing your first husband and you meeting and marrying your second?
So funny thing is I actually have known my last husband for probably 20 years. And when Stanley passed away, he left Kari and his boys some money, and Kari's my daughter, and she wanted a big girl car. She had a Mustang for high school and college, and she wanted a big girl car. So Steve, my current husband, I had bought many cars from him, and I texted him or messaged him actually on Facebook. I didn't even have his phone number, and I messaged him and said, "Hey, Kari's looking for a car," and he was like, "Okay, well, what do you want?" Blah blah blah. Long story short, Kari and I went up there, we sat down, met with him, and then he said, I didn't know he was divorced, and he said, well, we didn't move back from Florida. I moved back from Florida. And I'm like, oh. He said, maybe I'll tell you over a drink one time, over dinner, drink or something. I'm like, okay. A month or so later, he messaged me, "Hey, you want to have that drink? You want to hear the gossip?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm a woman, I want to know. And literally the rest is history. We started dating, talking, dinner, that type of thing. And then a year later, we kind of made it official. And I was still living in my house. He was still living in his. And that's it. We looked at each other for months like, how is this possible? How is this possible? There's 13 years difference between he and I too. So
He's older.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you like an older guy, huh?
I do. I like older men.
See, that's the pattern. And you got married during COVID, right?
No, we literally March 3rd of this year will be 1 year. We got married 3/3/23.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And I remember just seeing it online. It was like, hey, we did a thing,
we
right?
did.
That
So
was so
funny,
amazing.
funny story about that. When Steve had his brain aneurysm in 21, again, Kathy is not the type of person that runs. So for 17 days, I was just his girlfriend, just his girlfriend. For 17 days, he was at Emory, and I was there every single day. I left, I drove up there, was there before, bringing him breakfast. I was there at night. That's just who I am. And I don't know why that shocks a lot of people, but it does. They don't get that. And he said, we had talked about getting married. Neither one of us wanted to get married again. We both were fine the way things were. But he said that I earned my stripes, uh, with the aneurysm and being there for him, because we didn't know what this aneurysm, most people don't live through an aneurysm. Most people have debilitating. He has a little atrophy in his right hand, and that is it. So he is a miracle, a miracle. So he said I earned my stripes, and we talked about, getting married and just protecting, because we bought a house together, and just protecting what we have together. And so that's why we got married.
Nice. Nice. All right. So you lose your husband, you're dating someone now. You decided to start a small business in midlife. And I remember you and I kind of chatted a little bit about it. So what inspired you? You said a little bit with your ex-husband, or excuse me, with your former husband. But what made you just decide, hey, I'm doing this. I'm in the middle of my life and I'm doing this. You said at the time, how old were you when you started?
I was 46 when I started this. Yes.
Now,
And
most people don't start real estate at 46.
and looking back, I think, what was I thinking? But I was polar focused on it. I just was. There was no, oh, I can't do it. There's no, oh, will I be able to? There was no, I have two best friends that are in real estate. My best friends in real estate. They have told me for years, you ought to do it, you ought to do it, you ought to do it. And I'm thinking, we're in the same county, I'm never going to be able to get clients. I'm never going to be able to do it. That's what I told myself up until I made the decision that I'm doing it. And August of 2020, that's when I made the decision.
So pause. You told yourself that you couldn't do it. And
All the years before.
then you said, I'm gonna do it. So what was the shift? Tell me, it's like a light bulb shifted. What was the shift?
So honestly, the shift was the boss that I had in the HVAC. He sent out an email, and I was the regional sales manager. We had company cars. all that. And that company car was sitting in the garage. And I used it back and forth. I didn't have a personal car. He sent out an email to everyone and said, you can no longer, now this is during COVID, there, you can no longer use the car for company or for personal purposes. Well, to be totally honest with you, it pissed me off because I'm like, where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? If I have to pay for a car for myself, by God, I'm gonna make my own money and I'm gonna pay for it myself. And so Steve and I went on a vacation. I told him what I was gonna do. I don't know what he was thinking. He probably thought this woman is crazy. I came back. I researched Barney Fletcher, started taking the, actually, sorry, because I wanted to do the right thing. I was not going to take the real estate class while I was still working for this man. So I gave him my 2 weeks notice. He accepted my 2 weeks notice, paid me, and I met him to get the car. I started Barney Fletcher, and that's how I did it. So I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to be working on another job, getting paid by another. I just didn't think that was the right thing to do. So I went ahead and did that. So then I took a couple of months off, passed the test, and signed up with Keller Williams on December 1st of 2020.
Okay. I mean, that's huge. So you and I both know that, 80 something percent or 9%, whatever that crazy astronomical number is, of people who don't make it through their first year in real estate, right? And here you are, and I don't even know what the statistic is for people who start later in life. And here you are, it's like, hey, I'm gonna do it. It is what it is. What do you think was different about you in your first year of doing this business versus the other 89% of the people who actually fail in the business the first year?
I never said I couldn't. I never told myself that I couldn't do it. All I said was I can. And I also made a goal and I said, I've got to do this. This is what I've got to do. I knew the bills that I had to pay. I knew what I wanted. And I just didn't look back. I didn't look back. And now, my God, I wish I'd have done it 20 years ago.
Why is that?
Because I have surprised myself. I have made myself proud. I have heard from my daughter how proud she is. Oh, it's gonna make me cry. I just wish I'd have done it.
So let's talk about it. You said you wish you'd have done it. What were some of the initial hurdles that you encountered when you started your business, and how did you get over them? Like, what was the tough part for you?
Getting my name out before, but let me say this, before I used to sell a widget. You know, I had this little thing and I got to say, hey, this is bright and shiny and look at that. Here it is. You know, I got to do that. Well, now I had to go sell me. I had to sell me. People had to see me. That was hard. That was hard. Because before I could just blame it on this, that this didn't work. Now I've truly got to look in the mirror, and I've got to get up and I've got to do this. And there's no excuses. If I don't have a tummy ache, it doesn't matter. I got to go show the house, or I got to go to that closing. You know, I've got to do it. So I like to say before 20 years, and I said it a couple weeks ago in a post that I made. I made everybody else a millionaire.
Yeah, I saw that post, and that was the catalyst for me to call you. But there's something that I really want to just kind of hold in, and that is, you said I could blame it on the widget. They just didn't want the widget. They didn't want the widget.
Right.
And now you're saying, but I had to shift my focus to say they didn't necessarily want me per se, right? And how was it difficult for you to make that transition?
Yes, it still is, because I know me, and I know my word is my bond, and I know I'm honest and trustworthy and smart and all the things that I'm, but I know that I'm also not for everyone. And that was hard. That was hard, and still is hard, because you're not always going to be for everyone. And I'm learning that that's okay. I'm learning that boundaries are okay. When you have to let go of a $500,000 listing because you and that seller are not jiving, that's a tough pill to swallow, but you have to do it. It's just like in friendships and in marriage. Nobody wants to just cut it off and be done, but at some point you've got to say, how is this filling my cup? Is it overfilling my cup? Or is it just taking from me? Is there a hole in it and it's just leaking out? You have to decide that. And with real estate is so fulfilling. So I meet so many new people, and the good outweighs the bad. Always, the good outweighs the bad.
So I want to pause here because I think this is really, really critical, because I asked you the question about what it is that you think is different from you versus the other people who potentially may fail. You said a couple things that I think are very critical. The first is, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. And number two is, you decided that the piece that you want to fill in your business and you want to be helpful to those who believe that you can be helpful for them. And oftentimes, when we're in a sales business, especially when there's maybe a big paycheck on the back end of it, we're just going after people, right? And I need to get that check. But there's a huge mindset shift that says, but I want to feel valued and I want them to feel valued by me as well. And if we just don't jive, it's not personal.
Absolutely
We
not.
don't jive,
Nope.
right? And you're able to do more business when you are working from a place of contribution with people who will value. You work harder for them. And I don't think people get that. Like,
No.
you really do want to, do what's best for them, but they've got to trust you. And this is one of those places where they don't trust you. You're kind of dead in the water in this business. That's
I've learned through this, I've got to stop proving. Stop proving. I don't owe anybody to prove anything. I know my worth. I know who I am. I know I'm going to put my best foot forward 110, 120, 130% every single time. I'm human. I'm not perfect. So I screw up, I mess up, I forget something, whatever. But I know that I want to lock arms with people that want to lock arms with me.
Whew, that was good. But you said something I want to loop back to. You said I had to stop proving. That mean that came from someplace else.
Oh yeah, insecurities. Big
Let's talk
insecurities.
about that. Let's talk about that. Where did that stem from? That need to prove. Where do you think that came from?
I think it comes from the old industry that I was in. I was a female in a man's world. And originally I was the secretary, I was customer service, I was in the office. And then my boss said, he started championing me and was like, you need to get out. I want you out. Your personality, people have listened to you for the past 7 years on this phone. They need to see you. And I was probably one of the first in the manufacturing part of that industry, first woman to go out. So, excuse me, but I didn't want to be known as blonde hair and boobs. I wanted to prove that I was more than that. I was more than that. So I wore vest, to cover up. And I was the NASCAR talking, the Harley riding, the, horses. I was that. So they related to me and I wasn't all buttoned up, but I felt like going out there, I had to prove myself because there were many times where I was in front of a man who was holding the widget saying, oh no, it doesn't work like that. So I felt like I constantly had to prove myself. I was a Southern girl that had to go up north. Well, I had this in my mind. I'd never gone north of Tennessee prior to this job. And I had to go up north and I had this preconceived notion of who they were. They loved me. They wanted to hear me talk is really what it was. But, so I felt like I was constantly having to prove. And even still, some of that insecurity, that's where the mush comes from in the egg. Some of that insecurity comes out. Social media does it to you. Your kids can do it to you because they're brutally honest sometimes. And then some of your hardest critics are your best friends and they tell you. So that little insecurity on my shoulder peeks in every now and then telling me, you know, making me question myself.
And when that happens, what do you do?
I shut it up, as best I can, you know, as best I can. Sometimes I have to convince myself. Real estate has really taught me a lot about myself more than I ever knew. The mindset that I have, talking to myself better. Don't talk, if you talk negative, what is it? The voice you hear. If you, the way you talk to yourself typically comes true. I don't want to be that. You know, I want to be positive and affirmations and tell myself I'm good, I'm smart, I'm worthy, I'm trustworthy, I'm you know, all those things. So
I say often this business will reveal to you who you are and who your friends are.
yeah,
Like you will get to know really quick, fast, and in a hurry
yes,
what you're working with,
yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
right? It
very
is
true.
it's a definitely a look in the mirror.
Yes,
Awesome. So what I'm hearing you say is, I still have those negative thoughts. I still have this, this devil and the angel over here, and
yep,
they're battle in my head all the time. And I just kind of have to keep it moving. And
yes,
it sounds to me like you just decide on a regular basis which mind are you going to listen to.
yep. That's
This
100%, 100%.
Yeah. So with your husband, so with his aneurysm, has there been any residual effect, or was it just that one kind of lump amount of time that he was ill for a little while?
Yeah,
Right.
no, he can't. He used to golf. He can't really do that because of the hand. You know, it doesn't. He has to hold his hand when he shaves because he, you know, doesn't have the strength. Outside of that, no. I mean, I would say that our life is pretty much back to normal. He doesn't like to travel as much as I do. Um, so that's the only thing. I'm trying to drag him along to a lot of things, but that's, you know, is what it is. You know.
Solo travel is not a bad
I
thing.
know, I'm watching you. I'm
I ain't
watching
telling
you.
you what to do with your husband. But I'm just saying, there's
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm on a trip and there's going to be a bunch of us and I end up being by myself. It's what it is,
Yeah.
right? So tell me what you learned. Like, so real estate is one of those businesses where there's a lot of stuff going on at all different times, and you're in different places. What lessons have you learned about like time management and like managing multiple priorities at a time?
I have a lot of lists. I have a lot of lists, writing down what I'm doing, and I have to be more systematic about it. I kind of feel like sometimes I'm organized chaos, but then other times I'm unorganized chaos. Um, I don't have as many boundaries as I need to. I need to really put some boundaries in place for me. I think I just really did that by letting that listing go. That was a start. It was a pivotal moment, I feel like, in my business that taught me it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to do something you don't want to do. And as far as the juggling aspect, I've made it a point to put my phone down at certain times, not pick it up before 8:30, things like that, that really focus. I need to focus on me. Um, we have a new team lead now, and he is really pushing. He's constantly texting, asking, "Are you taking Kathy time? You're the team play. I mean, you're the main star. You know, you're the quarterback of the team. Are you taking care of the quarterback type thing?" So he's really pushing me to do that, which I'm usually not. I'm the last one to do that. I want to help everybody. I want to be there and do what I can. So I know that I can't do that. So there's a lot of things that I've got to put in place and really do better at. I feel like I'm a work in progress, but from where I was 3 years ago to where I am now, I pat myself on the back for what I've done. And I still have my hair. It's not any more gray. Haven't killed my husband, you know. So
I often ask about self-care. Do you have a self-care routine? Is there anything that you do on a daily basis really to make sure that you are reinvesting in yourself?
I don't. I don't. Uh, I'm not one of those. I'm not a reader, so I don't go pick up a book and sit and read for an hour, you know, or 30 minutes or whatever. So I'm not that. I do. If I'm at home and it's after hours, I've got the three dogs in my lap, and Steve and I are watching TV and holding hands on the couch.
I'm glad that you brought that up because Um, I just was going to ask you, what, knowing that you've lost your first husband, has that had an impact, like on strategies, on you really kind of being focused? Because you said he's divorced, right? So you've had a situation where you've lost someone that you've cared about. Do you have some specific strategies or practices that you use to build a strong relationship with him?
We travel together. So we do, his birthday's February 15th. We go every year to Gatlinburg for both for his birthday and then Valentine's. So we do that. We have a beach trip every year that we do. If not solo, we do it with friends. He is a sports fanatic. So we watch, sports together. We talk sports together. The one thing about Steve and I is we laugh. We laugh a lot. I pick, even though he's 63 years old, we pick a lot. We just, my thing is humor, and picking and all that. My dad used to say, if they're picking on you, they like you. So I guess that's where I got it from, but that's kind of what he and I do. And then he lets me be me. He knows I like to go to Florida and see my kid. He knows that I like to travel. He knows that I have girls' nights. And that's he lets me be me. And he doesn't try to stop me at all.
That's important. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because so many times, many of us get into relationships and we lose ourselves.
Mhm.
And now that you say that, and even going back to the conversation that we had about your first husband, I never heard a moment where you lost yourself in what was going on with other people. How, even though you've gone through these really challenging times, I heard you say, I was with him, I spent time with him, but I still worked my job, I still had my daughter. I heard you say with, your now second husband, he had an aneurysm, you were there every day, but you still maintained, your own identity. That, and I am honestly confessing, as a recovering codependent, has been something that has been one of the hardest things that I am just now at this age starting to learn to do. How did you do that?
I think with Steve and I, that's the thing that he loved the most is my independence. I think that's in my heart. He says that all the time, my heart. And I will say one of mine and Stanley's issues was that he wanted me to need him. And I don't ever want to need a man. I want to want a man. And so Stanley and I battled with that a lot because his ex-wife I guess she needed him. I didn't need him. I didn't need him. You said he was the breadwinner. I made just as much money as he did. So I had my money.
Thank you for correcting me for that.
No, that's okay. No, I'm very proud of that. I mean, I worked
Yeah.
my butt off at this company, this manufacturing company, from, like I said, secretary to regional manager. And then, so I'm very proud of that. But that is one thing that Stanley, he wanted me to need him. And I used to tell him, don't you want me to want you and not need you? So that was a bone of contention. So, but Steve already knew that I was an independent person and that I am who I am. And I guess my thing is if you love me, you should love me, period. Love me with short hair, love me with long hair, love me with hips, no hips, boobs, no, you know what I mean? Love me for who I am. And Steve has definitely done that. But I think the biggest thing, I figured out I loved myself, and I didn't love myself before. I didn't love myself before.
Oh, so we got to pause. Oh, that's huge, because you are now in a space where you seem very strong and have a strong sense of self. At what point in your life had you lost that? Or at what point of your life did you not have it and you built it? Where did that show up?
So as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I had Kari at 20 years old. I was 2 weeks away from 21. So while I had the fun stage and the teenage and all that, when I hit 20, I became a mother. There wasn't the party, and I didn't have the college atmosphere. I didn't go to college because I had her, all of that. And I think that I didn't know myself. I knew myself as a mother. And then Stanley wasn't Kari's dad, but he pretty much raised her. So Kari's dad, he was an addict and an alcoholic. So I had to be the one. I had to be the one. I had to be the everything for her. So I feel like that's when I lost myself, because I started being just Kari's mom. And then when I started working for Royal Metal, doing the HVAC ductwork, that's when I started realizing, wow, you have some value. Wow, you're this. Wow, and then I progressed through my career and went from secretary to regional sales manager and was put into a different position. So I started seeing myself in a different position. And then real estate really just catapulted me to, you are somebody. You are somebody. Stanley didn't make me lose myself, but he pushed me to try to be something that I wasn't. He wanted me to be kind of a stay-at-home mom and not be in a man's world, I guess.
Okay, I'm gonna take a moment here because you dropped some more nuggets. So we're gonna have to unpack some stuff. Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
First of all, you don't get to just say, well, Car's dad was an addict and an alcoholic and just keep going, right? We got to go back to that, right? So if that's okay, if it's not okay,
Absolutely.
we can keep
No,
moving. Okay.
absolutely. He's recovered,
So
12 years recovered.
I get that part.
Yep.
We're gonna get back to this ain't about him, it's about you right now. Okay. God bless him. I'm glad he has. But as a young mom, right? You're pregnant, you got this baby. Sounds to me like he had his, based on the way you've described it, he had his own issues, so you weren't necessarily leaning to him for support.
Nope.
So let's talk about what was going on with you in those 20s where you were losing yourself and you know this person's not there for support. Let's talk about what was happening with you on the inside then.
I was living, I was surviving. I say living, I was surviving. That's all. I was surviving. I was working to make sure food was on the table. That's all. A lot of that was a blur, to be totally honest with you, Tisha. Looking back, I go, my God, how did I get here? How did I get here? I blink and now I'm 50. I blink and now my child's 29. You know, I don't know how I did it. I don't. I just got up every day and I went to work. And I mean, I will say I never, ever asked my mom for money. My mom gave me money. She said, I'm not paying your bills, but I'll make sure you have food on the table. And so I remember her saying that to me and writing a $75 check and said, here it is, and it's for food and you better use it for food. You know, my lights got turned off many times and I never looked to Kari's dad for that because I knew it just wasn't coming. I mean, I didn't get child support on a regular basis. And I don't know how I did it, to be 1000% honest with you. I don't know. It's a blur. It's a blur.
How long were you a single mom?
Oh, 10 years, really. 10 years.
See, I knew there was something else about us we had in common.
Yeah,
I didn't even know
Stanley
that.
asked me to marry him and Kari was 10. Yeah, Kari was 10, 9 or 10. Yeah.
And at that time, I mean, it just sounds that Stanley ended up being just a really good guy, and that's, you know, very fortunate for you.
Oh,
And
he was amazing. Yes. He was an amazing father. He had 2 boys of his own. And he was an amazing father and he loved my kid like she was his. Like, I mean, and she calls him dad, you know.
so you said something else, that Stanley wanted you to be a stay-at-home mom or wanted you to need him and he had it covered, right? What made you decide that that's not what you wanted?
Because I wasn't giving myself up. I had lost myself as a mother, as a single mom, and I wanted more for myself. I owed more for myself. I owed myself that, and he really didn't want that, but he wanted that. If that makes sense, you know. He loved Miss Independent, but he hated Miss Independent. You know,
Yeah,
it was a bad,
That
it was a hard thing for him, but he also knew that that he loved that independence about me. You know, just doesn't make any sense, but
it does. Let me explain to you. It does. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why, and it's my transparent moment, right? One of the reasons why I'm getting divorced is because my ex used to really vacillate between the independent me and the dependent me, the independent me, the dependent me, right? And so I will say honestly, the only times where I really, really felt depressed or when I couldn't find my way is when my career was out of alignment. So when I heard you say, hey, I got into this job thing and I kind of liked it, you're not the first woman I've interviewed in this podcast that said, I got this job and I felt great about myself and life started to change, right? And this is no
Yeah.
slight to people who have chosen to be stay-at-home moms, but there's something about a contribution in a work environment that you actually get paid for that has a positive on your self-esteem. Now, and I've never been like a stay-at-home wife, so I don't know what it's like. I'm sure that there are wives that kind of get that from volunteering and community contribution. I'm only not speaking about that because I don't have that experience, so I don't know what that feels like. I do know what it's like to go to work and to be, very independent. In my household, however, it was a battle.
Mm.
And we were in a space where financially I didn't need to, and the battle wasn't worth it. The problem with that is I completely lost myself, and the person that I became, I no longer liked, whether he liked it or not. I didn't like her anymore. And that, so when you say, I didn't want to be dependent, I didn't want that. I totally get it, right? There's
Yeah.
some people, and I know, and I'm gonna be honest, as a single woman, like my son was already grown. I wanted a man, I wanted somebody to take care of me until I realized, yeah, you don't get that for free. There's a cost associated with it, and
That's
not just the financial
so true.
cost, but there is a cost associated with your self-esteem and your self-worth if you're not with the right person and your values are in alignment. And when I hear people say, I lost myself, that completely happened to me. And when you say, does that make sense? It absolutely makes sense, which is why we're having this conversation, because a lot of times we're going through something and we can't put language to it, right?
Yeah.
You got a
Yeah.
good man. A lot of women are like, I want a man. You don't want to be, I don't want a man. I don't know. That's not that. But there's something about knowing, just like you said about your husband, like, don't you want me to want you because I want you, not because I need you?
Need you.
There are some men who maybe don't have what they need on the inside, and they can't be in relationship with people they can't control, or they can't, be totally filled up with that
Mhm.
need. And it
Yeah.
becomes a blessing and a curse. So
Yes.
I totally get that. And it sounds to me like once you got your independence back, you weren't giving that up for nobody.
It's funny because when I was at Royal, I was meeting with one of our vendors, and he told me, he said, Kathy, I see you and I see what's going on in your head. He said, don't let this throw you over the independent sledge. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget him saying that. And I took that as both a positive and a negative, because he saw the independence in me, but he knew my heart was to love people and to be loved. And so he didn't want me to constantly do this all the time. I don't need you. I don't need you. No to every man. And I will never forget that conversation ever.
Sometimes it takes men to really kind of give us that kind, because sometimes we're talking about how to be a woman from women, right?
Yeah.
Hear it sometimes from a man, you're like, huh, I hadn't thought about that. But it's
Right.
stuck with you. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's stuck with you.
Oh, it stuck with me. Yeah.
Another thing that you said that I thought was really kind of pivotal is that your friends, you being you, your support from your friends and your family and your community play a major role in the happiness that you feel in your household and in your marriage. Let's talk about
Absolutely.
that a little bit.
I have always had, and my mother always said, you have got the best friend group. I do. I have unbelievable friend group. I have, rich people, not so rich people. I have nurses. I have other real estate agents. I have accountants. I've got it all. I've got stay-at-home moms. And they give me as much as I give them. And just like within a marriage or a relationship, dating, whatever, I think you have to have that both. I know that I could pick up the phone and call at least two handfuls of people right now and say, what can I do? What can I do? And that I need that. I need that just outside of just being with Steve. Sometimes I need to just drink wine and eat cheese and just talk about men. You know, sometimes I just need to do that. Sometimes I just need to plan vacations. You know, I've got a girlfriend that we go on vacation with. I've got a girlfriend that I concert with, go to concerts. I go to at least 10, 15 concerts a year. I need that. That's Kathy time. That's
Mhm.
my time when I do
So
that.
that's your
Yeah,
self-care. When you said,
yeah.
I have a self-care
Well, I
routine.
mean, I guess I think about, do I do a massage? Do I read books? Do I go sit in the hot tub? That's
No,
not,
no, 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 no.
I'm a
Self-
vacation. I'm gonna go to Disney. I'm a concert. That's me. That's my,
Self-care is what fills your cup. I think a lot of times we substitute those things for
Mhm.
what truly fills our cup, right?
Yes.
So I'm lonely, so I'm going to go get a massage. When you're like, I'm lonely, so I'm going to go engage with people so I'm not
Right.
lonely.
Yes.
So I think that's one of those things. And even as I say this all the time, what have you done to care for yourself? What have you done? I don't think people really realize my engagement with other people, my relationships, those picking up the phone and calling, my laughter, that those are all forms of self-care.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
We don't think about it though, like that, because it's been, we live in this Western culture where we're not taking care of ourselves that way. So we're doing these things to, make us feel better. That nah, I think it is. It for you, it is that. And so now moving forward, when I ask you on Self-Care Saturday, what did you do? I'm gonna ask you who you were with, right?
I probably went to some winery. We probably planned a concert. No,
I love it. I love it. So, Kathy, how do you define success? Like both in your personal and your professional life?
Previously it would have been, 10 years ago, it would have been the amount of money I had in my checking account. Now it's when I set a goal, not if I meet that goal, but if I get close to it. I don't have to beat that goal. I was never a goal setter. I was a survivor. Like I said, real estate has changed that for me. Now I have a goal, and every year the goal gets bigger. So for me, success is feeling good about how your year or how your whatever you have set out to do, how well you accomplished it. Um, it's my real estate coach told me one time something about a batting average, and a batting average or pitching average or whatever. They're not perfect every time, but they're successful. Did they win the game? Did they do better than they did the last time? And so that has helped me redetermine what success is now. It's definitely different than it was, 10 years ago. 10 years ago was to make sure I had food on the table and plenty of money in my account.
I love it. So, what advice would you give to other midlife women who are going through, this similar transition where we are in age? What would you tell them about considering entrepreneurship in midlife?
Um, make somewhat of a plan. I was a little, I just went out there and just did it. I don't know that I would recommend that. But, make a plan. Talk to someone that you feel will give you their opinion, honest and trustworthy opinion, that loves you and cares about you. Not a negative Nancy. If you have a negative Nancy, don't go to that person because they're only, but when you make the decision, don't look back. Don't self-doubt. Don't question yourself. Don't, wonder woulda, shoulda, coulda, because tomorrow's not tomorrow's not given. You don't know if tomorrow's coming. It's never promised.
I love
And
it.
also, what do you have to lose?
And finally, looking ahead, what are your goals and aspirations for the future? Like you have really probably stepped so far out of the box and exceeded your goals in ways and grown over the last couple of years. I've seen it. I've watched you grow to this really giant in our industry in a very short period of time. And I've never seen you be any different. You're always the same, smiling, bubbly. You're getting stuff done, but at the same time, you appear to me very grounded, very helpful always, um, very, eager to build your own life. So what are your aspirations for the future, both personally and professionally?
Personally, Steve and I both want to be debt free, and we want to own property in Gulf Shores, Alabama for vacation. He's counting down the days, if not hours, to his retirement. So we want to do that. I want to grow. I don't know if I necessarily want a team with real estate, but I do want to have someone that I work alongside. And I would like to find someone that is trying to get out of the business that I can start shadowing, that's been in the business 20 plus years and they're wanting to, and then I can potentially buy that business from them and grow that. And that, and my one big goal was to pay cash for my daughter's wedding. That was done. So that was this year's, she just got married in September, well, last year, 23. So that's done. But outside of that is just continue to grow, help as many people as I can, and then get him to Gulf Shore so he can retire on the beach.
I, I love
But
it.
I love real estate and helping new agents. And I've talked to our new team lead a lot about that. So I'm really passionate about that. And I never realized that I was, but I love helping new agents. I love that. It's fun.
I love it. Well, that is fantastic. I appreciate you so much for taking time to speak with me and really sharing our journey. And I appreciate you being open and allowing me to take you back a little bit, right? To
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the real conversations about where that resilience and that tenacity came from. And I think oftentimes we're in midlife and we forget, where we were and the things that we did to survive or even thrive. And oftentimes you just never know which of those things that happened back then that you're really tapping into right now. There's a 15-year-old girl that's like back in my history that really has been the catalyst for my change over the past couple of years because I just forgot who she was. And so, to see you and you being willing to talk about the challenges and really getting through it. And one of the things I appreciate is you saying, I got a hard shell and there might be some stuff going on the inside, but it's not coming out.
Yeah.
Any last words for you, Kathy?
Thank you for doing this. This is, I hope if I help one, I help hundreds. So thank you for doing this. It was
You're
awesome.
welcome. You're welcome. And that concludes this episode of the Midlife Makeover Movement podcast. Thank you to our guest. There's so many nuggets here that we're going to break up and talk about a little bit later, but I want to say that there's nothing about your experiences wasted. It all comes together for our good, even the most painful situation. I couldn't imagine even losing a spouse, but thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
All right.